Why don't you write when you don't need money, honey? That would certainly make a hit.
Welcome back to Word Docs. I'm your host of the week, Alex Vickery Howe, the best doctor. I'm here with Amy T. Matthews, the second best doctor.
I think I was a doctor before you were, so I might be the oldest doctor.
That's so true. And the really extra special, wonderful, magnificent Dr. Sean Williams.
What is that? What kind of favoritism is going on here?
Because I set myself up and I thought, I can't hurt him. I can't do it. And we also have guest doctor, Lisa Harper Campbell. Hi, Lisa.
No value judgment attached to my doctorate. That's fine. I think I got out scot-free there.
I wouldn't dare. And the wonderful, exceptional, brilliant, and I can't even pronounce his first name, Gianluca Noble. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm not a doctor, but I am a fan of this show, so it's an honour.
Well, that's all you need to have a doctorate, is just be a fan of Word Docs. So
honorary.
This is a special episode where we're going to talk about Watchlist, which has just opened last week at the Bakehouse Theatre. It's strange, actually, because we've been planning to do this for a while, except I suddenly decided a few days ago that we better actually get our act together and do this. But here we are. Lisa is the director of the show, and Gianluca is our lead character, Basil Pepper.
And Alex, just a reminder for the listeners, what is this watch list of which you speak?
It's a play I wrote that's, I don't know how long in the making now, how many years, that I wrote pre-COVID, and it has now been performed post-COVID. I think I've done this spoiler on this show before, so it's okay, which is quite remarkable given that the play sort of accidentally touches on something very COVID-ish or COVID-esque. I've said on this show before, I've been quite paranoid about how it may be received, but so far so good. I think what I'll do is I'll just tell the story very, very briefly, and then we're going to grill these two about what it was like actually bringing this thing to life, because I really haven't had much to do about it. The wonderful thing about being a writer is you throw it out into the void and go, good luck with that, and then you hide, which is pretty much how it's played out. So I guess the short version is that it follows the story of Basil Pepper, played by Gianluca, who falls head over heels in love with a character called Delia, who is quite dark and mysterious and apparently magnetic and captivating, although that's already gone to her head. And she gradually kind of gets inside Basil's head and twists him to her, I was going to say dark and evil ways, but that's definitely not how I see it, to her somewhat extreme pro-eco ways. And it's really about how this young guy is manipulated, I think, by everyone in his life, by his mother Marie, who's very closely based on my real mother, whose name is Jeanette Marie Vickery Howe.
This is all sounding very autobiographical, I've got to say. It sounds like all your past relationships and your family all rolled into one.
And his best friend, Roger, who I think probably is an amalgamation of several friends of mine, several active friends
some
of mine.
Some imaginary, some not.
So that's a really bad description of my own play, but that kind of gets all the information there.
Does that match with your description, Lisa? Is this what you think the play is about? Because you have the wonderful role of taking the mess that Alex has written and turning into something coherent.
Glad you said it.
Bringing it to life in some way. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. I'd probably just add in the extra layer of Basil himself being a young man without really any clear direction in his life, and represents a kind of a portion of the youth that aren't really engaged and have had the privilege of not having to engage in real life issues so much. And so they're able to say out of sight, out of mind. And so part of his, initiation with Delia is not only because of this burgeoning new love, but also this finding himself and his own ideology. And I think the other layer that's important to the story is that Delia, in her radical eco-terrorism, she says, I'm a terrorist, call things what they are in the play. She doesn't back away from the extreme nature of her activism. Because she is a radical eco-terrorist, she has garnered the attention of a government agent called Norman Gould, who is played by Matt Hawkins and adopts various aliases throughout the show, which creates a lot of comedy. I mean, that's where the title comes from. She's on a list. She's on a list of people being watched. And so that's another interesting strand about surveillance and where those boundaries are between individual freedoms to express yourself, to act in accordance to your beliefs, but where those lines are drawn as well. Yeah.
And these lists are real. You know, I was talking to, I won't name the people on these kinds of lists in the 60s and the 70s, and they still exist now. And so I think that was my initial fascination, which was, what would you have to do to be on that list? Because it was getting, I was reading something that Naomi Wolf wrote about finding out she was on the list when she was trying to go, I presume, overseas. She was told at the airport. She always realised that she took too long in the airport, and finally the service person said, "Oh, honey, you're on the list." And she went, "Oh, there's a list."
I'd be careful about her, though, because did you see she got banned off Twitter today? Crazy conspiracy theorists. So maybe she's not really on a list.
Really?
Yeah, she maybe the list is probably the place to be. But I also had this thing that when I was younger, for whatever reason, I just kept getting pulled over by the police. Not for driving, but for walking. I don't know if I've talked about this on the show before, but 3 times I've been approached by the police for walking. I don't know if it's just because I wander streets.
Where are you when this happens?
Well, the first time was outside Kirribilli in Sydney. So I go, fair enough. Like, if you're walking outside the PM's house, fair enough. But the other times was once in the back of Unley and once in, like, near the River Torrens. The one at the back of Unley, I was literally waiting for a pizza to cook. And I was approached by this cop, and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, I'm literally walking around the block waiting for my pizza. And he's like, "What kind of pizza is it?" I'm like, "It's a margarita." "Is it? And where from?" It's from Domino's. And then the second time was I was coming out of sort of the River Torrens, and this guy started questioning me, but then his phone ringtone was "Ashes to Ashes" by David Bowie. And at that point, any intimidating kind of vibe that he had just dissolved.
Now I want pizza. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah. I was going to say to Lisa and Gianluca, this is basically the podcast. You start out with a topic, and then Alex tells us some crazy story where he's on a train eating pizza.
I was going to say, like, it would have been suspicious if you were coming out of the River Torrens. Like, if you're appearing like a swamp creature.
That is possible.
Yeah, like the bunyip at Murray Bridge, like just coming out.
I think Ashes to Ashes is the least unusual thing about that interaction.
I do have a question, going back to Lisa's involvement as director. At what point, because I know nothing about this stuff, at what point do you come on board as a director, and what's the process like? So you see the script, you're like, I would like to work on this, Alex.
Yeah.
Or like, how does it work?
She was drunk when I asked her.
On a train.
Well, yeah, because I was kind of attached to it before it was...
Way before.
I mean, the final draft was done. I mean, yeah. So I was kind of attached to the project before it had finally taken shape. So, I mean, that was my misplaced faith in action, wasn't it? No.
So if you're attached before it's finished, are you guys having conversations about it as he's writing it?
Yeah, we were having conversations. I mean, ultimately, but at that stage, of course, I mean, that's his domain. I wasn't making any demands at all. But no, we were part of that discussion, and we knew right from the beginning that Alex, in creating this world and his script as it stands as a standalone script, would always be its own thing, separate to whatever production of it would eventually come about. So I think, Alex, you said to me recently, it's like the analogy of that you're putting down the like the building site plans for, like, the construction plans for a house, and then I'm actually building the house from those plans, but,
using actors.
Yeah, I might put in a bay window there, whereas you had a corridor. There might be like small changes, but the shell of it is still there. So yeah, I was attached to it right from the get-go. And I think because of the delay and everything with Currency Press in publishing it, I mean, we were locked in. I had to write director's notes before I had directed the play, which was really odd as well. But it was nice because there was that kind of sense of ownership of it right from the get-go. And the way that Alex writes as well, with these beautiful stage directions and all this stuff. I mean,
bossy. She means bossy.
Well, no, but it was really useful in terms of orchestrating a kind of rhythm and cues into the internal world of each of the characters. That was really nice. But obviously, in terms of actually bringing it to life with some of the real life constraints that exist in independent theatre. Some of that stuff just didn't happen, right?
Helicopter Alex.
Yeah,
Go take
yeah.
the helicopter away.
Yes.
Yeah, this army of government agents, the Snoops. I mean,
Snoops.
Claire, our stage manager, is brilliant, and and some of the reviewers, I haven't mentioned this to you, Alex, but some of the reviewers have picked up on just her wearing a hat is enough for them to be like, oh yes, she's another government agent. I was like, yes, good, good, that's enough. So there's been some, shortcuts made in the roadmap provided by Alex, but I was always very keen to honour the underlying message and worlds of each of these characters. I went in going, characters and ideas are the most important things in this production. So where I needed to compromise in some areas, I was not going to compromise on either of those. So
that's a nice segue, thinking about characters in terms of actors, since we have one of the actors here.
We do.
Oh, no.
Thinking if we start with casting, obviously then when you're looking at casting, every choice you make changes how the play's going to be. So what were you thinking when you started casting those roles and thinking about characterization?
What was I thinking?
Yeah, well, but in terms of you could, if you think about Basil, there are you look at 5 actors, that's 5 different kinds of Basil. And then you've got to think about, then you pick Delia, 5, each one interacts with the other one differently, and it's the very first production, so whatever you're doing has never been done before. So when you were casting, what were you looking for?
Well, I think I was looking for a core. I think there are core qualities to each of the characters that Alex has created in this work, and they're heightened characters. Even Basil himself is. He's so directionless, so blank sometimes that
so autobiographical.
Yeah, that's it. I was very lucky. Again, it's a bit of a weird process we've gone through because as part of as Alex was kind of finalising the draft, and so we SA Playwrights Theatre, the company that we've worked with to produce it, they did some public staged readings of some of the works, and Alex suggested Gianluca play Basil for the reading. And look, it was when it came to actually down the road being like, okay, we actually need to cast this now, because Gianluca, you did such a great job with the staged readings and it just suited so well. I didn't even consider auditioning anyone else for the part. I was just like, no, I've found my Basil. He had already shown me that he could be that kind of open, vulnerable, but also, enthusiastic young man ready to take in the world, even though he hadn't done it already. So, yeah, and and through just the stage readings, I got to know that, Gianluca, you've got the discipline, you're going to put in the work. It's a big, meaty role, all of that. So, no. So it was an easy choice to make. But with Delia, I did open it up to auditions, and I auditioned a few local actresses, and it came down to that kind of connection between Basil and Delia, and just a certain groundedness that I was looking for her. And then I think for Matt and Katie, who play Marie and Norman, they were kind of semi-attached to the project already, weren't they, Alex, in a way?
Just trying to remember. I suppose, I think
because the involvement with the company as well. And Eddie Morrison, who I've worked with before, is great for Roger and was always a bit of a no-brainer. So it was very easy. The casting process was very easy, and it all worked out really well, I think. Yeah.
So, Gianluca, you've been involved in this almost from the beginning as well, because the readings were some time ago, weren't they? How has that process been for you? I mean, having gone from Alex's readings to Lisa's production, was it a big development of character? Were you finding yourself reinventing Basil? What's your process?
I think Basil took a long time for me because there are parts of him that are quite like me, like the orcs and goblins that make an appearance in the show are my orcs and goblins.
Saving on budget. Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you.
But I, spend a lot of my spare time reading The Guardian, so I'm not exactly, unaware of things. I think when I was a teenager, I kind of had more of a directionless sense, so that's sort of where I'm harkening back the experiences to. But I think early on, honestly, I did think that it was a bit of a direct ego insert of Alex Basil, but then I sort of over time realised that Delia is actually more like Alex.
That's what we've heard all last year. You were saying that.
And so it was quite an interesting experience to sort of revisit the character after a couple of years because a lot went by from 2019. A lot has happened from 2019 to 2021, both in my life and in the world. And so to sort of interpret Basil through today was quite different. And as I said, it took me a while to get into really Basil's skin, because I was like, I said to Alex at one point, well, he's not dumb. He's not like, he's just uninformed. You don't want to be playing dumb because he's a sort of a real human being. And I think long story short, it took me a while to get into the sort of real experience of someone like this.
I think in a way, what's interesting is that you're probably more like the person he starts to become towards the end.
Maybe.
Like, I think that, once he sort of goes, watching the way it's come across now, I think he goes from being quite blank but well-meaning to quite extreme and aggressive. And then by the end of it finds a kind of equilibrium and goes, you know what, I'm going to be informed, I'm going to be a bit subversive. I think you needed to have a performer who understood the end point to then go back to the beginning and go, okay, let's start that. But I have a lot of students who I think are a lot like Basil, who are quite intelligent, but just, I don't know what's, for whatever reason, come to first year and say things like, oh, was the history of Indigenous Australia and colonialism, not good? And I go, yeah, no, guys, it wasn't good. That's a direct conversation.
What a framing.
Asking me who won World War II and so on.
Oh, they're very young. They don't know anything.
No.
Can I just jump in there? Like, I have to say that a lot of that in the design of the education system pre-uni is kind of deliberate. I think that some of just the ways that you sort of fall into, I think because you get a lot of like case studies at high school history and things like that, so you often don't get a whole understanding of things just because there's not very much time and everyone's got to write exams and things, and there's so much pressure on like getting the right grades rather than getting the right knowledge.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I got the Boxer Rebellion. I don't know why, but we just did the Boxer Rebellion. So when you meet these people, you think to yourself, they're not dumb. They're actually highly intelligent and curious. But they're not there.
But I wonder if it's not just about education, it's about the granular kind of nature of the world now, right? We didn't get a lot of our knowledge. I didn't get it all from history class. It was from the fact there were 3 channels, 4 channels on telly, and your parents had the ABC on and there was some documentary on that you were made to watch because there was nothing else on, right? You didn't have streaming services or a laptop or whatever. So the fact that you so curate what you take in now.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a really big thing.
You just fall into little voids of knowledge.
Yeah. I was just saying I do a bit of tutoring of young, kids doing drama classes, and because the media sort of landscape is so siloized for them, like, because once you start liking certain things, the algorithm goes, here's more things that are like the things you already like. And so when you talk to them about what their favorite movies are or TV shows, or if they watch those, sometimes I just watch YouTube. You have no idea what they're talking about. Yeah. And it's not just because I'm old.
Yeah.
It's not just because I'm old. But I think your point absolutely is right, that you can live your whole life not engaging with like a David Attenborough documentary.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't think he's silly at all. I think he's grieving, which I think is really important, and B, he's looking, like he's asking people, which kind of brings me to a question that I have, and this is a question for both of you, around the chemistry between that group of people, because it seems that one of the things people are picking up on in reviews and so on,
which are amazing, by the way. He's being modest. The reviews are incredible. Rave reviews.
Well, thank you, Amy. But I think a lot of it is down to...
It's nothing to do with you, Alex. What are you talking about? It's all Lisa and Gianluca.
Yeah, exactly.
Well done.
It's like a roast, this show these days. It's a roast. But how do you develop that that chemistry, and also I think prehistory, because I think there's a sense that Roger and Basil have this friendship, and it's not anything I've ever written. Like, I don't really know much about their backstory. I have a few thoughts, but
Yeah, we've had to do some. We had to make our own links quite a bit with those.
And also with the existing relationship between mother and son, and also finally between this mysterious woman who appears out of nowhere, and there's this kind of initially completely unverbal chemistry between them, or almost completely they meet and they kind of whisper to each other and make out in the rain, right? So how do you go about developing those relationships? Sounds like the first thing you do is say, well, the writer hasn't given us anything, so we better make it up.
Well, I think it was on day one, because one of the things that you mentioned before in terms of Basil and his journey into, extreme activism and then back to a kind of balanced, perhaps he would be somewhat politically active, at least in the future. We kind of hope that for the future Basil beyond the play. Is that the way that the play is structured, though, poor Gianluca, we had to constantly be like, hang on, where are we up to in the journey? Because there's flashbacks and he's being interrogated but retelling the story at the same time. So we always had to check in, hang on, where are we up to with him in this scene? All of this has happened for him already. So, who is the Basil that we're seeing in each of these moments? And part of that, so day one, we talked about the chronology of events and actually like, okay, what has happened for each of these characters up to this point? Who do they know? Who do they trust? Who do they not know yet? What are the points of connection? All of that. And so, one thing, after the kiss in the rain, the next thing we see is Basil and Delia out on a date. So we had to come up with a whole elaborate thing of how Delia left a note in Basil's letterbox saying, hey, Saturday, 8 p.m, by the way, my name's Delia. All this stuff that we talked through. But I don't know. I think in terms of the connection between, Gianluca and Catherine did Drama Centre together, which is very handy. So they're recent grads of the acting course, which is a very intense course. So they knew each other quite well going into it, which I think helps. It at least removes some initial obstacles, especially when there's layers of intimacy to work through as well. And similarly, I had worked with Eddie before in a rehearsal space, just one-on-one. So we had a really strong working relationship. I don't know, just as a group, it just seemed like everyone was really keen and willing, and it was everyone was positive about the experience and, willing for me to just boss them around a little bit. So that's good. I don't know. I think, it's been a friendly, warm rehearsal room, I think, throughout. Even when it was getting down to the pointy end of teching in, people didn't take it to heart when I said, shush, I've got stuff I need to do with the text. But I think it was all fine. I don't know. Gianluca can probably talk to it more as one of them.
I was just going to say, Lisa is one of the most diplomatic and measured directors I've worked with. Manages to avoid shouting when I probably would have shouted about 10 times. So, yeah.
I have two questions. I can remember what they are. Oh, yeah, that's right. What do you want audiences to take home from this play, from this performed play? What is Watchlist leaving? I want to say viewers, but that's not part of the audience view. A thought, a feeling, both, more?
Gianluca, do you want to go first, or I can speak to that?
I'll tackle that one. I think that the thing that I really think is important for people to take away from it is that the lines of each of the characters' sort of world views are all challenged in the text. Like no one comes out of that play looking saintly or like that's the direction that we have to go. But every character also has a point. So for example, Norman Gould is the embodiment of authority and the system and bureaucracy and a sort of moral, I don't want to say relativism, but pragmatic nature. He's like, look, this is the way the world is right now. We eat meat. It's accepted. It's legal. So we have to start from that point. And you can't just kill people because you don't feel like listening to their views. That's a good point. And that's something that everyone has to think about in politics and everything else and in public policy. But he falls down because it's like when you just commit yourself to upholding the system, one, what are you really defending? And two, you're going to make sure that nothing actually changes and then you become part of the problem. So I think all of the characters have that kind of, you get challenged by each of the characters' failings, right? So when you're watching it, I hope that people come away and say, I identify with this character. There are people who would identify with Delia or with Roger or with Basil.
Or Norman, even.
Or Norman, absolutely. Yeah, and go, I didn't think of that. In my logic of how the world works, I didn't think of that failing. It's one of my favorite moments when Norman finally learns to feel again. In the play. Yeah, so I think that's been a big thing for me. And also that Basil sort of, at the end of it, this is from Basil's perspective, but I really enjoy the moment when Basil stops letting himself be manipulated by everyone else in the play and decides to forge his own path. And I think that's really important for audiences. It's important to be true to yourself and to your beliefs, and even if that means shaking up the world, it might be worth it. It's important.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think audiences were challenged but entertained, and which I think is, a great combination. And I hope people walk away saying, "What a great production! To how well acted, well directed, well designed." I don't know.
That guy,
I don't know.
he was
Maybe
really good.
maybe that too.
Maybe one or two people might think, gee, that was well written.
Yes. Oh, he's had enough of that.
You might have already answered the other question I was going to ask, which is who's the audience for this play? Is it a play for left-leaning types like me, or is it a play for anybody who's looking to be challenged by their entertainment? Amy and I are going to see it on closing night, so we haven't seen it yet as we're recording it. Both read the play, but it's very thought-provoking text.
Do you know what's
challenging?
I'm sorry. Do you know what's really interesting about that? Just from reading the responses, is that I think you can see people's political alliances based on whether they call Norman the antagonist or Delia the antagonist, which is really interesting to me. So, I mean, I wrote it trying to do exactly what Gianluca is saying, which is, I remember when I was working with Caleb Lewis, my imaginary friend who was the dramaturg,
Who called you
me
during opening night.
We're not going to get over that, to say, how's it going? And I went, well, we've both fucked it up, so there you go.
Writers, they're the worst.
It's a good moment. But
a good
we were
time.
saying when we were writing it, by the end, the challenge is, what are you going to do? Because you don't want to be any of these people, really. Or you are all of these people, but all of these people are flawed. And so that was absolutely at the heart of our thinking. In terms of audiences, I think, everyone, are you allowed to say that as a writer?
Yeah, well, no, I said that as I was asked the same question recently, and I don't want to narrow our scope. I mean, I think because there are big picture ideas. I think anyone who's interested in the state of the world could be another answer, in terms of and our engagement with it. So I think there's something to be from any point on the political spectrum. And from any age as well. I think often issues like this get divided in terms of it being generational issues, whereas no, I don't think we have to buy into that kind of argument as well. So I don't think it's not a play just for the youth. It's not a play just for the boomers or anything like that. It's got broad appeal. Which is nice.
Nice with the cast too, because I love being around a group of people who are different ages and very different and very interesting personalities. That's kind of one of the really fun parts about all of this, I think, is just when you're in a room with all these people and go, under most circumstances, we wouldn't all be in a room together. It doesn't really make sense.
That's right. Yeah.
I have a question for Alex now, because I was lucky enough to have Alex come and give a lecture for my class last week on his career, his very varied career.
He wasn't sober at the time.
But he framed it around how horrific. It was the morning after opening night, and he was a little worse for wear.
He was.
But he framed it around how horrific it is as a writer to sit in the audience and watch your work. And so I was wondering if you could share that on the podcast as well, because I found it really interesting. As someone who writes novels and never has to see my audience.
It's awful. I hate it. I hate it more each time, which is interesting, because I think I was probably a bit cocky when I was young. I was like, oh, this is great. But now I'm just like, ugh. And I think Katie O'Reilly, who plays Marie in the play, who's a old friend of mine, and we were at drama school together, she said it's a bit like going to your own funeral, because everyone's there more or less because you started something. And they're all kind of talking about you, but you can't participate, you can't speak, you've got nothing to add to what is going on, but you just kind of have to be there. So there's part of you going, what is my purpose here? Like, what do I really add to this situation? And there's another part of you going, on some level, this is my own issue that is now going to play out for the next 2 hours. My own issues are going to be kind of dissected. And I said in the notes for the play, I think I really split my brain between Roger and Delia. I think, probably Roger and Delia are like, if you split me in half, that's what you'd get. And both of those mirrors are quite uncomfortable. And I get weird when they get criticised. I'm like, excuse me, she's awesome. What are you doing? And you just sit there and you think, I don't want to be here when it happens. I just don't want to be here, even if it's going well.
So on that, I know this is supposed to be the last question, but I've got one more quick one for the three of you, which is what happened? Have you ever lived through a bomb? Like where you've sat there and it's just gone completely wrong, hasn't landed? Because this one is a huge success. So
What do you mean? Do you mean a show that I've watched or that I've been a part of?
that you've been a part of, where you have to kind of sit through it knowing it's not working. Because this one's a huge success. Everyone should go out and see it if you haven't already.
See it again. Go back again.
Yeah, just go see it again.
Yeah.
Go again. Go closing night and come and see me and Sean.
I'll tell you what I will say, because I have sat through shows I've written that haven't bombed. I don't think I've ever written anything that's bombed, but I have sometimes sat through shows I've written and gone, this is really not what I think I meant to do. And sometimes they've actually been really successful, but I've still been really annoyed because I'm like, no, I'd rather fail on my own terms than be successful. And what's been lovely about this is that coming in quite late, I was able to say, this is what I hoped it would be. And then you don't really care if it bombs. You kind of go, well, I'll go down with the ship if that's the case. What was lovely about this, and this is a credit to Lisa and Gianluca and everybody else, is that I went, this is what was in my head a year ago.
That's going to be pretty rare, really, that something's...
That's quite rare.
Yeah.
I'm pleased to hear that. I just remembered that we, at the end of our acting showcase at the end of Drama Centre, we were made to... It was good intentions and stuff, but with Showcase, you start in Adelaide and then you tour to Melbourne and Sydney to impress agents and stuff. And the show itself went really, really well. But a decision was made for some reason for us to do a Bollywood dance number at the end. None of us are of Indian heritage.
Oh, no.
At all in our year. And none of us were very good dancers. But
you went for it.
We thought we'd do. But we did it. We committed to it. And it was just hilarious to see the response in Adelaide, where it was like family and friends and people who knew us. They were into it, loved it. Melbourne, they were like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, not bad. Sydney, stone-faced. Like, just, what are you putting us through? So that was a fun way to end our 4-year acting degree in Sydney, just stone-faced, just us. Please like us.
I just thought that was an interesting question because it's a very brave thing, theatre, because you go out and you face your audience front on.
Yeah.
I've been in shows that have been conflictingly reviewed. And I think it's really hard as an actor to know if you're doing good work, maybe, because you do have to build up like an internal measure of that. You go, okay, I've stuffed that up. I need to work on that next time.
Or I killed it, I nailed it. There we go. Let's pepper that in. You know?
All right.
Good.
It can be quite hard to step out of it, because acting is such an individual personal process to step out of it and go, if I went to see this show, what would I think of it?
And that's been nice. That's been nice as a director as well as an acting with an acting background to make that transition as well, and how I've communicated with the actors, because I know what they're going through as well.
Yeah.
But I've been that outside eye.
That must be nice to have a director who's been in your position. Now, I think Alex has forgotten his hosting once again. So as second best doctor, I'd like to thank our guests today. So thank you, Gianluca. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, for being guest and host.
Well, sort of.
And Watchlist is playing at the Bakehouse Theatre in Adelaide, and it's playing until the 12th of June. So if you haven't got along, get along. It's getting the most incredible reviews. I think someone who shall not be named was called the Sondheim of theatre. Was that true?
Yeah. Didn't impress my mother because she didn't know what it was. Didn't impress her at all. If it had been Andrew Lloyd Webber, she would have been thrilled, but no.
I think, isn't there already a Sondheim of theatre? Isn't it Sondheim?
I mean, technically.
It's a weird thing to say.
Yeah.
The Sondheim of playwrights. And when I learn how to play the piano, watch out, world.
On that note,
God save us.
For next week's episode, Amy, will it be our review?
amazing.
Oh, that'd be
we
nice.
should definitely do that.
Just the two of us. Maybe we won't invite
An hour of sledging
My
Alex.
kids are coming too. We could get the kids to review it. That would be interesting.
Oh, the Isla's tough, man.
She's honest. You'll get an honest review.
Oh, are you brave enough, Alex?
No, I'm a coward. Completely a coward.
Well, he's already had his parents see it. How much braver do you need to be?
And of course, I couldn't find out what my mum thought because she doesn't know how to use her phone, which is revealed in Act 1, Scene 2 of the play.
It's all there, guys. Alex's life is in this play.
Yes, Alex naked,
Yes.
revealed for the world to see. Oh, sorry.
You had to take it to that place. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Weird that a walk around the torrents got us here, but
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye all. Thanks again.
Why Why don't you write when you don't need money? All your notes sound alike too much. All of them start with I love you, honey, but they end with the same old touch. Just for a change, send a nice loving letter and cut out that please remit. Why don't you write when you don't need money, honey? That would certainly make a hit.
I think it's, by the way, what I was going to say before, I think it's because when I get a beard, I'm slightly creepy.
Right.
Okay.
Right, it's the beard.
Yeah, the beard. Yeah.
When you're bald with a beard, that's it. That's total creepy. That'll be sent it to your final form.
Or is it wizard?
Or is it wizard? Let's leave it there.
He looks a bit wizard.
That could be our new catchphrase for the year. Is it wizard?
Yeah.
Is it wizard?
Is it wizard?
Just replace happy writing. Done.